Hey everyone, it's Damien here. What I'm going to go through today is I just want to show you how when you make decisions to buy a home and how if you can implement the right strategy from the start and get ahead of your loan from day one, how that impacts and how that flows through. Because being a broker for over a decade, I see the same thing happening over and over. And that always happens at the start when you take out your first mortgage. And what a lot of people will do is they'll go and buy their first property and they'll think 30-year loan term, we'll just pay the minimum. And they might say, well, yeah, because we're going to sell it in 5 years anyway. We're not going to be here forever. And I see that happen a lot. And I think, I know that it's not the right way to think about debt. And I'm going to give you a bit of an idea around how that flows and what it actually really means. So let's rip into it. Let's say you've got a couple that go and buy a property for $700K, right? They're going to buy a property to live in, and they say, well, we're going to live in it for 5 years, and then we want to buy something bigger or want to move or whatever it may be. Most people don't live in their first home for more than 5 to 7 years, sometimes less. And then we're going to go buy another property after that to live in for $1 million. It's actually going to be for 15 years. For 15 years, right? I'm going to fix that up. All right, so let's look at it. So scenario number one, they go and buy this property for $700,000. And let's assume that they've borrowed 80%. Now, I'm well aware that not everyone can borrow 80%. This is just an example to show you how it all unfolds. Most people borrow 95% nowadays with the government schemes and everything, but for the purposes of this, let's just stick with a loan of 80%. And then you've got the wrong way and the right way in how you can tackle this debt from day one. Now, let's say after 5 years, they're going to sell this property, and let's assume a conservative growth amount of 3.5% per annum. That property that they bought for $700 in 5 years' time would be worth $831,000 approximately. And they decide to sell that property. And let's use 3% for selling costs, agent fees, advertising, all that sort of stuff. They're left with $806K. Now, if they approached their loan the wrong way, they would still have a loan of $529,000. And after selling, they'd be left with $276,000. If they approached the loan the right way and they paid their loan off, if they had were on track to pay it off in 10 years, they'd have $375K, which would mean that they'd have $431,000 to use towards their next purchase. And the difference between the both is massive. Like it's $154K. From simply approaching it the right way. And I'm going to say 90% of people don't approach it this way because they think we'll pay the minimum, we're going to sell it in 5 years, it doesn't matter. Well, it actually does. It makes a huge difference. In fact, it's probably the biggest decision you make when you tackle debt from the start and how that can trickle through to help you over time. So they've sold that property. They've now decided they want to go buy a bigger home. And let's say that property that they wanted to buy for $1 million is now worth just under 1.2, right? By the time they buy this property, there's some costs associated with that. It means that it's going to cost them 1.2, just under 1.26. Now, you've got two things. If they approach this new purchase with scenario C, which is your 276, they'd have a loan of $982,000. If they approach their loan with scenario D, so the right way, and they use the 430, they'd have a loan of $827. Okay, cool. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that now, let's say they stayed in this home for 15 years, right? And let's say that they could pay their loan off in 10 years. Which is possible. But let's go conservative. Let's say it took them 15 years to pay it off. Let's say they didn't pay it off in 10 years and they paid off in 15 years. How does their scenario look after this transaction has occurred for 15 years when they decide to sell this property? Most likely downsize or buy another property, whatever it may be. Let's just look at this. So after 15 years, they've had 3.5% growth, which is really, like, it's pretty conservative, which is why I want to show you the conservative amounts. So 3.5, so the value is 1.976, so just under $2.2 million. And again, after using 3% in selling costs, you've now got a net amount of 1.917. Now, if we are to approach this like we did here, the wrong way and the right way, what does their position look like? Well, if they approach their loan the wrong way and just approach it with a 30-year loan, after 15 years, they'd still have $725,000. And they'd be left with $1.19 million after selling costs and everything, which is still decent, but it could be a lot more better. If they approach it the right way, well, effectively, they'd have no loan, so they're getting the whole amount of 1.917, and the difference is obviously the loan amount, 725, that they'd have left here. Like, it's over $750,000. That's a huge amount to go and either buy your next property or downsize, whatever it may be. This strategy or this concept, this example is here to show you the power of how your decisions you make from when you first take out debt, how that flows through to decisions you make throughout your life with debt. And the difference of, so between the both of them, you've had 20 years of loans, right? So you've been in debt for 20 years and you've ended up with no debt at the end of that. And I can even do an example and show that if they paid that over, like even if they didn't pay it over 10 years and 15 years, what that would look like, it would still be far superior. Now, this is a huge chunk. If you looked at this and said, well, this is someone that bought, in their 30s, 20 years later, they're 50, and they now want to downsize, I mean, that money could go into super and they could increase their super by $250,000, $750,000. And it all stemmed from when they took out their first loan. But we don't think of that because we think it's 30 years, I'll pay it off, I'm going to sell it. The reason you stay in debt is because the banks just give you the 30-year loan term and you accept that as normal. And unless you start to do something about it, it's why when you get to this stage and you think we've still got this much money owing, you're going to be in debt still. And there's strategy you can do. This is just by paying, like I'm not even talking about how you pay it down sooner, but it's just possible with various ways. So thanks for watching. If you want to know more about how you can work with me, there's a link in the description. You can book in a call. This is what I do. I teach people how to pay their loan off. I've been mortgage broking for over a decade and I have my own mortgage broking firm. And my focus is now helping people get out of debt and strategize to make better decisions. And it all starts with when you first take out debt. So thanks for watching. Again, if you want to know more, if you want to know how to work with me, you're welcome to click below, book in a call, free call. We can have a chat.